Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back again to another Line Vibe Live podcast. I'm your host, Yori Arman Kemp, here from the beautiful islands of the Bahamas. And I thank you for joining me on this U.S. Independence show, this July 4th. Happy Independence to the United States of America. Even though this is Caribbean Line Vibe, we just want to say thank you for America for being our greatest ally, greatest friend in the world. I just want to say happy independence to all the Americans out there who are listening and watching into the show. Okay? But let's go straight into the show, huh? We have a few things to talk about tonight. You know we're going to talk about Diddy at the end, right? But let's talk about what the World Bank had to say about the Latin American, the Caribbean, and the Latin American Caribbean Economic Review. They said that organized crime is feeding the imbalances inside the Latin American Caribbean. Say organized crime has gripped these countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Western Hemisphere, in South America and Central America and the Caribbean. The report said the traditional development challenges in Latin America and the Caribbean are increasingly compounded by the expansion of organized crime in the region. Now, my take on it is, right, I don't think our governments are, gripped by organized crime and criminal underworld people. I think that's just, how would I say this? That's just a conventional wisdom people just like to latch on to, right? That's just something that people say. I don't believe these countries, except for the odd case of Venezuela, and the Maduro regime, there aren't any governments in and around the Caribbean and Latin American region that are gripped by organized crime. There just aren't any. And I think it's just one of those things that people like to say about, Latin American countries and Caribbean countries, but that's not the case. I just don't think that's the case. And I haven't seen anything that changed my mind to say that there is an organized crime epidemic. Now, I would say there are organized crime elements within these Caribbean countries and these Latin American countries. But to say that the governments are gripped by them but they can't do any work on behalf of the people, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all. I think that these are just exaggerations by these think tank organizations that know very little about the culture and the socioeconomic fabric of Latin America and the Caribbean. So that's in the World Bank LACER report, the Latin American and Caribbean Economic Review report that's out right now on the World Bank's webpage. And you can also go to Caribbean Magazine Plus, our sister magazine, and you can read the story about organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay? I'm trying a new talking pattern, where I notice all these journalists, they like to talk like, yeah, I'm trying to talk like that. So I'm trying to get that. Now I understand when they do that, because they do it because they want to remain very clear and understandable when they speak to the people. So I'm going to try that the best way I can. Let's learn something, huh? Let's learn something as we go along. So the next story we have tonight is former Prime Minister Stuart Young in Trinidad and Tobago will not be getting a pension because of a new law that they passed inside the Trinidadian Parliament just last week. Apparently, the Prime Minister's Pension Amendment Bill 2025 was approved on Friday evening with a vote of 27 votes for the ruling United National Congress and its coalition partner, the Tobago People's Party. The People's National Movement opposition, they abstained altogether from the vote because the vote attacked their former leader, Prime Minister Stuart Young, who wasn't in the chair for no more than about, I would say, 6 or 7 months, because, and not even that, I think it was only about 2 or 3 months, to be honest with you, because he took over from Keith Rowley. And Keith Rowley, the former Prime Minister, decided to step down after, serving about 8.5, 9 years. And he said he was bowing out of politics altogether. And so Stuart Young picked up the mantle and he ran with it. But everyone could have seen that, Stuart Young was being groomed by Prime Minister Rowley to take the helm. I mean, he was shadowing former Prime Minister Rowley everywhere that he went. And, he's getting sent on very important high-level discussions around the world, from Venezuela to the United States to Europe. He was going someplace and he was speaking on behalf of the Trinidadian people. So everyone could have seen that coming. So I just want to give you an idea of, let me turn my phone on silent, sorry. It didn't go off, I just want to remind myself to do that. Let's turn this on silent. Blah, 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 blah. There you go. Let's go to the story on Caribbean Magazine Plus, where it says, Rowley, gave Stuart Young the short end of the stick. But I think Stuart Young knew what he was up against with the sea tide and him being a new leader for the People's National Movement, the PNM. And I think he understood that it wasn't going to be a tough sell to sell him as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Okay? And the opposition leader now, Penelope Beckles, said that she could not, in her right mind, support a bill that targeted Stuart Young in that way. Because apparently the bill has within it that anyone that's less than 2 years, only 1/3 of their full pension they should get. Anywhere from 2 to 3 years is 1/2 of their pension. Anywhere from 3 to 4 years, 3/4, and 4 more years full pension. That's a high bar, man, because who knows who will actually serve a full term. What if something happens, right? And so, yeah, it needed 41 MPs, and they got the votes they needed. Now it's off to the Senate. It was off to the Senate. It's been passed in Parliament now. And Stuart, who was appointed Prime Minister on March 17th, 2025, after his predecessor, Dr. Keith Rowley, decided to quit politics after 35 years, more than 35 years of public service, after having been elected in 1991, leading the then governing People's National Movement from 2010, when he won the election against now sitting Prime Minister Kamala Bissessa. So apparently, Rowley beat Kamala twice. He bowed out, and Kamala came back and beat, Stuart Young. But Stuart Young won't get his pension. He hasn't been in 1 year. And so that's why the opposition People's National Movement, they sat out, they abstained from voting on the pension bill inside the Trinidadian Parliament. This is kind of unfair. It's kind of petty, to be honest with you, 1 second. It's very petty. And if that's how the UNC is going to start off their administration being petty, I don't think it's going to last very long. I think it's going to be a one-term prime minister, a one-term government, like how she was the first time. It's just too petty. It's too small. You don't get by with pettiness, man. I think that's been very poor taste. Very poor taste. Very, very poor taste. It's just sad to see them do that to Stuart Young. They didn't do nothing, He has took over the mantle from Dr. Keith Rowley. If anything, they should get at Keith Rowley if they're really upset. But they can't, because Keith Rowley is too smart for them, to be honest with you. Now, there's another troubling story from around the region. Now, I don't know if you guys know about this sargassum seaweed. Okay? It's made its way all the way up to Cuba and the Gulf of Mexico now, and it's just flooding beaches. We have a video I want to show you how intense, that sargassum is, because Barbados and the southeastern Caribbean countries, they were dealing with it for the past several years. Now it's becoming a full-fledged problem, going all the way up to Cuba now. Next thing you know, it's going to be in the northern Atlantic, or the northern Caribbean, I should say. And, that's going to be a problem, because we can't deal with sargassum in our, pristine beaches here. That'll kill tourism. I'll just let you listen to this guy, this Al Jazeera report, and they'll tell you exactly how, sargassum has been affecting people. Let's play that now. Let's go.
About 38 million metric tons of the sargassum seaweed, a brown, prickly algae, has been smothering Caribbean shorelines over the last month. That's 16 million tons more than the previous record amount. It's been damaging tourism, killing wildlife, and even releasing toxic gases that forced a school on the French Caribbean island of Martinique to close briefly. Jose Rodriguez is a Puerto Rican fisherman. He says business has been hit hard.
The sargassum is a very bad thing for fishermen. You can't fish properly because everything comes out full of sargassum, which is very strong. The sargassum reaches the shores. Throwing the nets also doesn't work. The fishermen that fish with nets get full of sargassum, and this is a problem because the fish leave the area.
As well as keeping holidaymakers away, the dark seaweed stops sunlight from reaching coral reefs. Experts say that runoff from agricultural land, warming waters, changes in winds, the currents, and rainfall amounts could all be factors.
it's an active area of study, actually. We don't have a really clear example of what is causing this specific massive bloom. But generally, anytime you have, just like for any plant species, anytime you have the seed population, the right nutrients, the right light environment, the right temperatures, you have conditions that are right for explosive growth. And that's what we're seeing right now. In the context of climate change, it's not necessarily a one-to-one for warmer temperatures will yield more sargassum. Just like with any organism, it's got a temperature tolerance. So if it's too warm, you may actually get less growth. And same thing if it's too cool.
Whatever the doubts about the specific reasons for the huge increase, there's no doubt that it's hitting the livelihoods of hundreds of people, and indeed the lives of thousands of animals across the Caribbean region. Paul Ging, Al Jazeera.
Yeah, that's a good report by Al Jazeera right there. Al Jazeera's been doing good work over the years, and they gave a good account of how dangerous and how serious the sargassum problem is. However, there is a company in Barbados run by Joshua Fort, a young Barbadian, a young Bayesian. It's called Red Diamond Biotech. Okay, Red Diamond Biotech, where he turns sargassum seaweed into a biofuel. And it's going pretty good from the last time I spoke to Joshua Fort. I'm not sure if he's making any bigger strides, but it's a pretty solid gig he has going on there where he turns into biofuel. Just search Red Diamond Biotech and Joshua Fort Barbados and sargassum, and you will have it right there. But if you go to Caribbean Magazine Plus, and you'll see our story on sargassum posted there today, and you will see exactly how he goes about doing that, and then you can see how to get in contact with him, how to spell his name, how to spell the name of his company, and that should take you right there. Okay? Now we got another spicy story for you tonight. I know you guys have been watching. I know you guys have been following Diddy. Diddy's being acquitted of all the serious charges. The serious charges that have been levied against him from sex trafficking and the RICO charges, organized crime. The RICO charges, that's the most important one. So let's play a video from TMZ, and let's show you all the other stuff that Diddy's been going through. And plus, Diddy's being charged another $10 million lawsuit from a Dominican, a Caribbean national. A Dominican called Edmond Laurent. He's suing Diddy for $10 million for rape and drugging him, and also giving him stomach cancer. But let's listen to the TMZ video first. Let's see what they have to say for themselves.
Today was a monumental loss for prosecutors in the Diddy case. I wish there were a bigger word than the word losers, because that's what they are. This case would never have been brought if the only issues were whether he transported a sex worker across state lines to have sex. There is no way they would have done it. I mean, you look at this case, and they had 70 Homeland Security agents at Diddy's homes in Miami and LA, and they spent a fortune putting this case together. And what did they get? A not guilty verdict on racketeering, a not guilty verdict on sex trafficking as it relates to Cassie, a not guilty verdict on sex trafficking as it relates to Jane. Those were the reasons why this case was brought. They said he was a racketeer. The jury said no. They said that he was raping Cassie and coercing Cassie and Jane and forcing them into these freak-offs. The jury didn't buy it.
See, and that was the crux of the case right there, no one believed that Cassie and Daphne Joy, 50 Cent's baby mama, they were being held against their will. And in addition to that, all of the male escorts that were brought in by Diddy, they said that they weren't sex trafficked, they didn't feel forced, and they said that the women they were sleeping with, either Daphne Joy or Cassie Ventura, said they didn't feel uncomfortable at all, actually. And so it wasn't rape, it wasn't sex trafficking, they were willing participants. And so that's why the only thing Diddy really got convicted of is the prostitution. But let's go back to the rest of the TMZ video.
Now again, I wasn't in the courtroom, nor were you. I mean, you got to see the witnesses, see the evidence. And the jury not only was not buying it, But now that we look at it, remember, an hour into this case, an hour into deliberations, the jury came back to the judge and said one of the jurors, juror 25, was not following jury instructions. What really stunned me about that is that it's almost like he was the holdout and everybody else felt one way, he felt another way. And they did that within an hour. And he obviously came around, it seems, and this didn't seem a difficult decision for the jury. It seems like they were pretty much in agreement on the first straw vote. So did the prosecution prove its case? No. Yes, he was found guilty on the Mann Act, 2 counts. But again, this is an antiquated law. Let me just explain the Mann Act. That if Diddy had taken somebody from the San Fernando Valley, a sex worker, and then brought them over the hill to a hotel in Beverly Hills and paid them, well, that would be solicitation of prostitution. Guess what? It wouldn't even be a felony case. The DA wouldn't take a case like that. It'd be a misdemeanor case that the city attorney might file. Generally, they don't. But if they do, it's 6 months, maximum a year in county jail, which they never give. And yet, we are now looking at a prosecution that got 2 convictions of putting a sex worker on an airplane and flying to where Diddy was. That's what this case ended up to be. A huge, a monumental loss for prosecutors. And I gotta say that I'm gonna go back to the news conference the U.S. Attorney had, where the U.S. Attorney spent time talking about baby oil. And when I heard him talking about baby oil, I'm just thinking, what does this have to do with a federal prosecution? Yes, it's salacious, but what does it have to do with 70 Homeland Security agents? Now look, and I'm not saying Cassie wasn't abused. We know she was abused. We saw the Intercontinental Hotel video, but he wasn't being prosecuted for that. And to say, and I have talked about this from the beginning, to say this dude was a racketeer, he's a bad guy. And I think a criminal. He's committed a lot of crimes along the way. But a racketeer, and again, I will say this one more time, a racketeer is somebody in organized crime. This was disorganized crime. This was a jealous, crazy, even criminal boyfriend who is so crazed that burglarize Kid Cudi's house, or maybe blow up the car and kidnap somebody and give them a lie detector test. But there's no enterprise. It's not Bad Boy Records. That's not what Bad Boy.
Yeah, and that's what the jurors have to look at, man. I mean, where was the organized crime? I mean, all of these just point to Diddy just being a freak and a bit of a crazed boyfriend, like how TMZ is saying. You know, it wasn't really nothing criminal that anyone could really point to say Diddy was involved in an organized criminal racket. Come on, man, that was a bit of a stretch. So all this really did was just totally just embarrass Diddy. You know, everyone knows the sexual proclivities now. And so, you know, it's just embarrassing, humiliating to him. Whether he could come back, I'm not sure if Diddy could come back, but we'll have to see. But he's still a very powerful man. He still has a lot of contact. But listen to the rest of the TMZ video.
Was doing. It was a crazed boyfriend who was doing this. That's not organized crime. And clearly, the jury saw that. And they came back unanimously on it. So what do we end up with? We end up with a case that, if it was all within one state, would have been maximum a misdemeanor in the city attorney's office. Just think about that. So now the question, what was really behind this? Maybe the prosecutors really believed in their case, but I question that news conference where, you know, they decided it's not just that we're going to file a case against him, we're going to have a whole big news conference laying out all the evidence, talking about the salacious things like baby oil and Astroglide and whatnot. And then you got to wonder, was their motivation to seek justice, or was this at least in part a publicity grab? And I say that because I don't get, A, why they held a news conference, and B, why they're bringing in things like baby oil. I want to say one other thing, that, the jury saw the freak-off videos, and a lot of people thought, oh, that's going to hurt Diddy. I think it's the opposite, because that video doesn't get in the head of Cassie or Jane. They just see them having sex. And, between looking at the video, looking at those text messages saying, when are we going to have the next freak-off? I love these freak-offs. It's possible for sure that there were times when they didn't, but the jury wasn't buying that he coerced them. They just weren't buying it because it's complicated when they're in long relationships with Diddy. So I'm not saying they weren't abused, but the prosecution, to file a case like this, to spend this kind of money, to invest the resources they did, they got to know going in that there's a chance they can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It seems this jury had no problem finding him not guilty on the main counts. Now, as for what's going to happen to him, whether he's going to get significant prison time, I don't know. I just don't think so. Because ultimately, do you put a guy in prison because he hired a sex worker and flew him on an airplane? Do you put him in prison for 10 years? I don't think so. Do you put him in prison for 5 years? I don't think so. Now, you could say, well, we're going to put him in prison because he's just a bad guy. But that's not what the law says. The law doesn't say you can look at a guy and say, he's just a bad guy, so we're going to throw the book at him. That's wrong. That's wrong. They did that with O.J. Simpson in that kidnapping case in Las Vegas. And even though I covered the O.J. Simpson murder cases, the civil and criminal, and knew he was guilty, the kidnapping case was BS. And yet, the judge threw the book at him as a pound of flesh because he was found not guilty in the murder case. That wasn't fair. That wasn't right. And you can't look at the guy and say, I just dislike him so much that I'm going to do what I might not do if he were a different guy. You got to apply the law fairly. And I just don't see him getting significant prison time. I may be wrong, but this Mann Act is an antiquated law. It was used for racial purposes initially. And it's no different from, going after a John on Hollywood Boulevard, which is a misdemeanor case. It's transporting a sex worker. So I just don't see significant time here. Bottom line here, the prosecution may have convicted him on the Mann Act, but they lost this case in a spectacular way.
Yeah, and I agree as well, too. They just overreached, man. They overreached with the RICO charges. That they watered down the RICO charges because the RICO charges were for things like, the mafia, John Gotti, Paul Castellano. That's what the RICO charges for, man. For people who have an organized criminal enterprise that they're using to actually further their criminal empire. That's what the RICO charges for, not for, someone getting freaky with their wife or their girlfriend and flying out sex workers. That's not what that's for. And, the most they probably could have charged Diddy with, and they probably could have gotten away with it, they could have gone to the state route and just charged him with conspiracy. And just scrap the RICO. They could have gotten the same charges under the conspiracy charge with regard to all the other charges that he had under the RICO charge, sex trafficking and whatnot, but having to use a RICO. And I think it's just an abuse of the RICO charge. And I think what TMZ said was right. It's an antiquated, the Mann Act is an antiquated act, and it needs to be revised. Because now, prosecutors are using it for everything now. It's just gotten out of hand, man. So, that's where we are with that. So, yeah, and also now Diddy's being sued again by another gentleman. This guy is a Dominican guy. He's a former model and actor called Edmond Laurent. He lives in the United States now, and he's alleging that, Diddy raped him and drugged him and raped him and gave him stomach cancer. The story's on Caribbean Magazine Plus as well. And so this Laurent guy, he has a YouTube channel as well. It's not very, very populated. It's just a few views. Nothing. He doesn't really do anything like that. I think the last time he actually posted a video was about 4 years ago, if that. So yeah, this Laurent guy, Evan Laurent, nice looking guy too. And Diddy's been picking some of the most handsome looking guys for these sex by these freak offs, man. But that's why the Bible says don't follow. Don't get involved in this immorality, this sexual immorality, man. Don't do it. It's embarrassing. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting, man. Don't do it. Keep yourself pure and clean. Don't get involved in these sexually immoral acts. Don't do it, man. And now I see why the Bible says so. Not because of the RICO Act and Diddy, but it's just embarrassing. His reputation is in tatters now. Diddy's reputation is in tatters. You destroyed a promising life, a promising career. We could help a lot more entertainers and young people to get up out of the hood. But no, you threw it away, getting freaky. And apparently you listened to all the trial as well too. He was getting those male escorts to come all over Daphne Joy and Cassie Ventura, and he would have them rub the cum all over his nipples. It was just sick, man. Diddy just is a sick guy. But that's the way he got down, man. So what can we say? Now we have to watch what this Edmund Laurent guy does with his $10 billion suit. But let's go back to the top of the show. We talked about the World Bank, Latin America, and Caribbean Economic Review, and how they said that organized crime is, holding a lot of the Latin American and Caribbean countries back. So it's compounded the issues in the region. It's compounded the issues in the region where the development challenges are made worse because organized crime has gripped, these Caribbean and Latin American countries. They said the traditional challenges in Latin America and Caribbean are increasingly compounded by the expansion of organized crime in the region. The traditional development challenges in Latin America and the Caribbean are increasingly compounded by the expansion of organized crime in the region. We also talked about former Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago, Stuart Young, who won't be getting a pension because he was only there for a few months. And with the new bill that was passed in the Trinidadian Parliament, the Prime Minister's Pension Amendment Bill 2025, where it says anyone under 2 years will only get 1/3 of their pension. Between 1 year and 2 years, 1/3 of their pension. And anybody under 1 year gets nothing. So that's the high bar they're setting for now. The Trinidadian Prime Minister's coming forward now in the future. Let's hope that they don't get bitten by that. Then we also have the sargassum problem. The sargassum seaweed problem is making its way all the way up to Cuba and going up to the Northern Caribbean waters. So we'll just have to see what's happening, man. This sargassum is a real scourge, man. It chokes off coral life and chokes off fish. And fishermen can't fish, people can't swim. It is stinky and it's disgusting and it's dreadful. And people can't even use beaches when sargassum is washed ashore. So this is just something that we have to get our mind around. And scientists are saying that the climate changes are really causing this sargassum explosion in the Caribbean. It's going into the Gulf of Mexico as well too. So yeah, sargassum seaweed. Just do some research on it. If you go to Caribbean Magazine Plus website, and you would see Carib Mag Plus, and you would see the story that we have on sargassum. It's very disgusting. And also we talked about Sean Diddy Combs and how he was found not guilty in all the major RICO charges and all the major sex trafficking charges, only guilty on pandering and prostitution, soliciting prostitutes, male escorts. That's really, I don't think that's even 2 years. That's a misdemeanor charge. If he serves 2 years, that's a lot. But still, someone like Diddy doesn't want to be in jail at all. But he's being convicted and he's being humiliated in front of the world. And that's where it is right now, man. Diddy is just being totally disgraced. Totally disgraced. And that's the way it is, man. Like I said just recently, just then, man, the Bible said to keep yourself from sexual immorality and immoral practices, man. The Bible said to keep yourself clean, your body clean. The Bible said that, man. The Bible preaches that. And, Diddy fell, and he fell victim to his own lusts and getting off. But there's some other backstory of Diddy as well, too, with Cassie Ventura. Apparently, Diddy had a thing for Tupac. He hated Tupac with a passion. All right? And apparently, Cassie Ventura loved Tupac. And that's why they were saying that he abused her so much. But, I hope she goes on with her life. She's gotten $30 million altogether from the Diddy case. $10 million from the hotel, another $20 million from Diddy himself. And so, hopefully she'll go off in the sunset now and spend the money and enjoy the rest of her life. She surely got abused for it. She probably won't be an entertainer anymore. Apparently she wasn't that much of a good talent anyway. And so she'll just go off in the sunset. So I just want to thank you guys for joining our show tonight. This is Yuri Kemp from the Bahamas, the Lime Vibe Live podcast host. And I thank you for joining me. And hopefully we'll be back again for another Lime Vibe show next week Friday. But enjoy your Independence holiday, United States of America. We love you here from the Caribbean. This is Yuri Kemp signing out. Goodbye.